안녕하세요. 포션의 김기태입니다. 약 1년 전이죠. 용군단 출시와 함께 이한 게임 디렉터님과 저희 포션에서 인터뷰를 진행했었습니다. 그리고 이번에 용군단 2시즌 10.1 패치를 맞아서 다시 한번 개발진분들과 이야기를 나눌 수 있었는데요. 사실 그 사이에 개발진분들에 대한 유저분들의 평가가 많이 긍정적으로 변화가 되고 있다고 느끼고 있습니다. 그 이유는 아무래도 빠른 패치 주기, 그리고 유저 피드백의 적극적인 반영, 이런 것 때문이 아닐까 싶은데요. 그래서 이런 변화들에 대해서 개발진분들의 생각을 직접 듣고 싶었습니다. 오늘 인터뷰에는 이한님 뿐만이 아니고 홀리 롱데일, 와우 총괄 프로듀서님도 함께 해주셨는데, 이 두 분의 와우팀 리더분들에게 와우의 개발 방향성, 그리고 최근에 이런 변화들에 대해서 심도 있는 답변을 들을 수 있었습니다. 그럼 지금부터 바로 확인해 보시죠.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm Holly Longdale. I'm the executive producer of World of Warcraft and have been since May last year. And prior to that, I worked on WoW Classic. I originally worked with the team starting around when we shipped Burning Crusade Classic.
So yes, I am Ian Hasikostas, game director on World of Warcraft. I have been working on WoW for 15 years now, which is incredible to think back on, and game director since 2016 Legion. It's a pleasure to speak with you, and I look forward to hopefully someday being able to do it, in person. I think one of my fondest trips in my time as a Blizzard employee was going to Seoul and Busan for G-Star maybe 10 years ago. And I'd love to get the chance to go out there again and speak in person.
Great question. It's been a whirlwind since I became the executive producer in a very positive way. The team has undergone a number of changes since prior to Dragonflight. The team has grown significantly, and the reason for that is, as you're seeing today with Dragonflight and the additional patches that we're doing, we really want to go to the next level when we're serving the community. We want to provide content and wonder for any way our players play. So you're seeing a lot of different types of play styles represented in what we are giving to the players in 10.1 as well. And those are some of the biggest changes. And when we talk about our development philosophy, it is about listening to the community, getting their feedback, and being able to deliver for them in these additional patches we're doing more often, so that we're delivering what the players are needing. It's more dynamic, so that it's when we get the feedback and see what players are doing, we're able to respond in our patches. And it's been incredible so far to see the reaction to it, and we're paying close attention to the community and the feedback that we're getting.
I think the team as a whole is, and myself included, are tremendously proud of our efforts with Dragonflight. I think it's been so gratifying seeing players' reaction. I mean, the way we judge the success of anything we do is a combination of two things. It's the feedback we're hearing from players, what they're telling us, and then what we can see in our data, how they're playing the game, what activities they're doing, and are the things that we put time into making being enjoyed by as many players as we hoped would enjoy them. And I think the answers on both of those are very positive. Dragonflight. It's great. It's really gratifying feeling this sense of positivity from the community as we work to continue to build this world and tell these stories. I think in terms of what comes next, it really is just following through on the promise of Dragonflight, on that content roadmap, on things for all players, for from continuing the big story that we're telling to making sure our dungeons and raids and PvP are the best they can be, then also just the little bits of charm and just fun scattered throughout the outdoor world that give people the freedom to explore. We want to do everything for everyone.
We can say a lot of this is really experimental and we're looking to see how this plays out. We started with this idea that, around, every 8 weeks or so, like, 6 and 10 weeks also as an option, just to see what would happen if we could deliver more of a living world to our players, where it feels like, there's always something right around the next corner to engage with. And so the team has been working since before we shipped Dragonflight. They started working on this idea of what does it mean to keep the world alive and vibrant, in reaction also to what we know historically players have enjoyed, as well as taking some chances on some experiments with content like trading posts as an example. And then 1007 with Return to Forbidden Reach, again, is this idea of what happens when we give our players basically a sandbox to play in that's really geared towards outdoor endgame content, which is, like Ian had mentioned, it's about just participating in the world story and events on that level. And so the team is really focused on trying new things for the community, as well as delivering, what we know players love and enjoy. So it is a learning experience for us, as I imagine it is for players as we deliver all this content. And it's really exciting to be able to get the feedback and see what players are doing, and then immediately take that to the next patches that we're planning, which Ian and the design team are doing. So it is, as I mentioned earlier, much more dynamic and in real time as we watch the effects of, what we're doing with our content.
I mean, I think the team really, for the last year and a half now, has had a bunch of people coming back into the office. So we've been living in a sort of hybrid world, some working from home, some working from the office, and that continues. I think regarding the increased patch cadence, our goal is actually to take advantage of the extra flexibility that having more frequent releases offers. I think in the past, when sometimes you might go a 6-month period with only one patch in that period, it put a lot of pressure on the team to make sure that everything, every small feature, every improvement, every change made it into that update, because if it didn't, players were going to have to wait a very long time. Now, when we have something always just coming up on the test realm just a few weeks away, it actually, in a lot of ways, makes scheduling easier and more flexible, which I think helps the team to accomplish these ambitious goals and do more for our players. I think there has definitely been a shift in philosophy over the last couple of years to make more frequent changes, sometimes smaller changes, and if it ends up not being enough, to make more changes more frequently. I think action is important, and speaking back to the community to explain what we're doing, why we're doing it, is important. All of that is about building a relationship, hopefully, of trust between us, the development team, and the community. Because we're not always going to get it right. Despite our best efforts, we're not always going to make everyone happy. But hopefully, if we make changes quickly enough, if it's clear that we're listening, then if we get something wrong, the community can have some trust that we are going to fix it. So I think that really has been our goal, and I'm so proud of the team as a whole for really embracing that on everything from class balance to counter tuning to our story. I think really it is the product of player feedback and us, listening to our community. I think that there have been changes in the way the community approaches the game over the years. And I think, going back to Legion, for example, which was a very successful expansion, well received by the community 7 years ago, that expansion featured tons of things to do every day, every week to progress your character, to level up your artifact. And that was, we received praise for it at the time, and I think it reinforced ideas that those elements were what the player base wanted and were important to the ongoing health of the game. But clearly, sentiments started to change over the course of years, and what we heard increasingly from players was that it felt like World of Warcraft was not respecting their time, that it was asking for too much of them for what it gave back in return. And so I think really from late Shadowlands onwards, we decided to re-examine every philosophy, every foundation of our game design to make sure that it still made sense for our players in this modern day and age. And a move towards more account-wide things, more alt-friendliness, more flexibility in choosing how and when you want to play was the result of all of that. First off, thank you. That is a great question. It's something that we spend a lot of time thinking and talking about. I think Mythic Plus is, one of the most successful features added to the game in a long time, because for a long time, the only way that you could really challenge yourself and get the best gear was by raiding. And that required a very large group of people and a time commitment, and Mythic Plus made it more flexible. But as I touched on earlier, I think one group that we're still not serving as well as we could are players who either, are solo or just have one or two friends that they play with, and want even more flexibility in their approach to the game. And I think there's something more that we could do there to give solo or even smaller group players a feeling of progression and goals to chase, so that then really we could have that sort of competitive progression experience for all play styles and all types of group sizes.
Great suggestions. We're really excited by the community's reaction and how they're participating with Trading Post. It actually exceeded our expectations, which is wonderful. And that's one of the beautiful things we get to do when we experiment based on community feedback. With regard to where it will go, I wouldn't want to limit it because I think there is a lot of opportunity with it now that we know the community is enjoying it. So I like your ideas. I'm sure Ian and I can take those ideas back to the team. But I think we're going to be exploring more around Trading Post and what we're doing there because the community enjoys it. And that's what we really love about the direction we're going in, is that we get to try some of these things and maintain them and serve the community over time.
Definitely. As I think the answer to a lot of these questions is going to be the same, just driven by player feedback. As I mentioned earlier, players let us know that when it came to how they spent their time, it could be just frustrating or disappointing to need to repeat some of the same content multiple times on different characters. And that led us to ask and make sure that we're actively deciding that if we ask you to do something again on a character-by-character basis, that it's part of either that character's power progression and personalized journey, or is meaningfully different on one character versus another. Earning PvP achievements or running dungeons is a very different experience if you are a rogue or a mage. But playing through a narrative questline, that is the same story once you've experienced it, and we want to give the person behind the keyboard the power to decide whether they want to go through it again or that they'd rather skip to the parts of the game that they enjoy more on their other characters. So yes, great question. There was definitely a conscious and deliberate change in how we approach live class balance and hotfixing in between our patches, in between our updates. I think in the past, we were intentionally conservative when it came to making changes because we worried that if people's classes were constantly changing or the balance was constantly changing, it could be kind of unsettling for players. It could make it hard for them to really, know what to expect when they logged in. But I think what we realized, guided by player feedback, was that the feeling that changes weren't going to happen was very disheartening for people who saw their classes, saw their specs underperforming or less desired as group mates by others. And when people looked at some classes or specs that were on top, it made, it caused people to feel like they should re-roll and switch to that spec. And that wasn't really healthy for players' experience in the long run. So by making changes more frequently, we both, I think, have achieved a better balance, but hopefully it reassures players that it's okay to keep playing what they enjoy most, because even if it seems like they're weak right now, we're going to fix that and make them stronger. I pause for translation before I do the second half. And then just to follow up on the second part of the question, what we look at to make our changes, I think, so it's everything that was listed in the question. What sorts of changes are needed and how large? We're definitely looking at both our internal metrics, our internal data, and public data. But interestingly, I think one of the biggest questions is not just how much we change something by, but who needs help and where we should focus our attention. And that really is guided by community feedback and by representation. That is, how often players are being able to find groups for different types of content. Because I think it's maybe strange, but the reality is, it doesn't matter whether you're actually OP or not. If the community doesn't think that you are and keeps turning you down for every dungeon group you apply to, that's every bit as much of a problem as you actually being weak. So even if our numbers say that some spec should be fine, if the community doesn't think they are and thinks they're weak, thinks they're C tier, D tier, and says no all the time, we need to change something. Otherwise, they're not going to have a good experience.
As a player, in my history with World of Warcraft, I've always loved the story and the characters. And with Dragonflight, I was excited to see the engagement and the feedback from the community around the story and the characters itself with Dragonflight, around themes of hope and aspiration, and just some of the delight taken in the characters and the stories that were told. I think looking back on Shadowlands, it was a much, it was a darker theme, which again, I enjoyed that story too. But to see the community rally around Dragonflight and the story has been, for the team, I'm so proud of the team and that success. They put a lot of heart and soul into that and into it, and it's lovely to see the feedback around it and the connection to the characters in Dragonflight. As I said before, to me, Trading Post has been a really fun surprise to see the engagement and that it's beyond what we expected, and we're very grateful for that. And so we are now dedicated and committed to that and growing with it with the community. Yeah, that's my point of view.
I think one of the things that I'm just really proud of and just happy at the success of is the effort that we put into repeatable outdoor world gameplay as just a centerpiece of Dragonflight. World of Warcraft has always had amazing dungeons and raids, and if you have a group of people to play with, those challenges are the best out there. But for people who prefer just to explore, to play solo, and to just, work on progressing their character, to adventure through magical lands, there hasn't always been as much as there should have been in WoW for them. And Dragonflight really tried to change that, and we're trying to continue doing that going forward. And I think that's something that I'm, proud to see the team do, and really happy to see players embrace. One maybe a slightly unexpected surprise, but a happy one. I think within the outdoor content space, I think the soup event in Azure Spam that came together actually late in development for Dragonflight, just seeing that turn into this really cool public event, and then hearing players in dungeons like saying "yes, chef" to each other because everyone had fun making soup together. That just became this quick moment that was part of WoW's culture in a really fun way.
Thank you for remarking on my past. You're right, and the team itself, the WoW team at large, we have this conversation quite a bit about how we reinvent ourselves and stay at pace with what's happening in the industry overall. And as we talk about, we are now in this era of really responding to the community. I think we will be talking about it more as we have, and we'll continue talking about it. But we are very aware that, the world continues to change and we need to change with it. And so I think we'll be setting our sights on that going forward. And the space that has evolved so much over the years. I think I started playing versus working on games a long time ago, 25 years or so. And just how technology has evolved, and as well as how gamers and players interact with each other. We need to provide every possible avenue to support these new ways to play and communicate together. So we're always evolving. Thank you for joining us in the Dragon Isles, and hang on to those reins of your dragon. There's a lot more to come.
Again, as Holly said, thank you for your passion and for joining us in Azeroth. I think really it is our humble duty to be able to serve you. And we are so excited for everything coming up in Dragonflight and beyond. And Embers of Neltharion is coming to servers next week. But then pay close attention, because we're going to have news about 10.15 and what's coming next right after that.
지금까지 홀리 롱데이 와우 총괄 프로듀서 그리고 이안 해지코스타스 게임 디렉터 두 분과 이야기를 나누었습니다. 여러분들은 어떻게 들으셨나요? 제 개인적인 소감을 말씀드리자면은 오늘 인터뷰 내내 가장 많이 나왔던 단어가 바로 커뮤니티였습니다. 그만큼 와우 개발팀 내에서도 이전보다는 더 훨씬 민감하게 유저분들의 피드백을 받아들이고 있다 라고 생각이 되는데요. 사실 게임이란 게 어떤 커뮤니티의 요구대로만 개발이 되어서도 안 되겠지만, 사실 와우가 이전에 들었던 부정적인 어떤 유저분들의 반응이 뭐였냐면은 블리자드는 피드백이 너무 느리다, 또 유저분들의 요구와 맞지 않는 패치를 하고 있다, 이런 것들이었거든요. 근데 오늘 인터뷰 그리고 용군단 1시즌의 패치 방향, 지금 이 시즌에 나오는 패치 내역들을 봤을 때는 많이 개선이 되고 있고, 오늘 인터뷰를 통해서 앞으로의 와우에도 더 기대감을 가질 수 있었다, 이렇게 제 소감을 말씀드릴 수 있을 것 같습니다. 인터뷰를 진행해주신 두 분의 와우팀 리더분들, 홀리 롱데이님과 이안 해지코스타스님께 다시 한번 감사의 말씀드리고요. 오늘 인터뷰가 진행될 수 있게 도움을 주신 블리자드 코리아 관계자분들께도 감사의 말씀드립니다. 그럼 여러분, 이제부터는 네타리온 FC 용군단 시즌2에서 만나 뵙도록 하겠습니다.